A millionaire returns home early and cannot believe what he sees. The world knew Alexander Hayes as a titan of industry, a man whose gaze could command boardrooms and whose word could move markets. At 45, he was the architect of a sprawling technology empire, a labyrinth of glass skyscrapers in New York City and data centers humming on every continent. To the press, he was the cold billionaire, a man who shunned interviews, scoffed at lavish parties, and buried himself in the silent language of numbers. His life was a monument to success, but it was a monument built on a foundation of bone-deep loneliness. He walked through the halls of his vast Upper East Side mansion, not as a master, but as a ghost. The silence was his constant companion, broken only by the echo of his own heavy footsteps. 3 years ago, his wife, Amelia, had passed away. A sudden, swift illness, one he was sure could have been cured if he hadn't been 1,000 miles away, closing a deal. The guilt was a shadow that followed him, a poison that had turned his once vibrant home into an empty mausoleum. He couldn't bear to be in it, so he stayed away. He left at dawn, before the city had fully woken, and returned well after 10 at night, when the house was draped in shadow and his 5-year-old son, Ethan, was fast asleep. Work wasn't just an escape. It was a form of self-punishment, a way to occupy his mind so completely that he wouldn't have time to remember the laughter that had once filled these rooms. And so Ethan grew up in a gilded cage, a beautiful, lonely boy with a kind heart and legs that were far too fragile for his spirit. He was born with a congenital condition that made his muscles weak and his joints unsteady. He relied on crutches, little purple extensions of his arms that clicked softly against the marble floors. He had the best tutors, the finest doctors, and a staff of nannies and housekeepers who saw to his every need. But they could not give him what he truly craved: a father. Ethan's world was a small one, confined to the sunlit corners of the mansion. He would sit for hours in the grand library, surrounded by thousands of books he couldn't reach. He would talk to the paintings on the wall and whisper secrets to his favorite teddy bear. His favorite time was late afternoon, when the sun slanted through the tall windows and the light seemed to dance on the dust motes. During these moments, he would sit at the foot of the grand staircase, just in case he could hear his father's car pull up early. But it never did. His days were a routine of lessons and physical therapy, a string of predictable hours that would stretch on forever if it weren't for one person. Among the revolving staff, a young woman named Sofia Ramirez was a quiet anchor in his life. She was 28, with warm brown eyes and long dark hair that she kept tied back. She had been hired as a housekeeper, a quiet presence who cleaned and organized with remarkable efficiency. To Alexander, she was a blur of motion, just another employee on the payroll. He didn't know her name, didn't care to. She was a line item in his budget, a faceless part of the machine that ran his life. But to Ethan, Sofia was a star. She was the only one who seemed to see him, not just as a fragile boy to be cared for, but as a person with thoughts and feelings. She would sit with him while he drew, listening intently to his stories about the knights and dragons he imagined. She was the only one who didn't wince when he stumbled or sigh in frustration when he was too tired to practice his exercises. She was his confidant, his playmate, and his best friend. One brisk autumn evening, a corporate negotiation that was expected to last until midnight concluded unexpectedly early. A rival company folded on a key point, and Alexander, feeling a rare moment of victory, decided to go home. He didn't call ahead. He just got in his car, the silence of the plush leather interior a welcome change from the sterile drone of his office. He had no particular reason to rush back, but a strange, unnameable pull guided him toward the massive oak doors of his mansion. He didn't know it then, but this single, spontaneous decision would be the hinge on which the rest of his life would swing. The grand doors opened with a soft electronic hum, and Alexander stepped into the living room. The sight before him made him stop dead in his tracks. His perfectly manicured living room, a space usually as pristine and lifeless as a museum exhibit, was in gentle disarray. In the center of the polished floor, a young woman knelt, a rag in her hand. It was Sofia, the quiet housekeeper he barely knew. But it was the scene beside her that stole the air from his lungs. His son, Ethan, was wobbling precariously on his small purple crutches, a tiny cleaning cloth clutched in his hand. His face was a mask of concentration, his blonde hair falling into his eyes as he tried to wipe a spot on the floor. He swayed slightly, his fragile legs trembling under the effort. "Tia Sophia, I can clean this spot." Ethan's voice was a small, determined whisper, full of a joy Alexander hadn't heard in years. Sophia looked up and smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "All right, Ethan, you've helped enough for today. Go rest on the sofa. Let Tia Sophia finish." "But I want to help," Ethan insisted, his blue eyes shining with a fierce light. "Tia always says we're a team." A wave of emotions Alexander couldn't name, grief, shame, and a searing envy, slammed into him. He stood frozen, a statue in his own home. He couldn't remember the last time he had seen such unguarded happiness on his son's face. "Very well then, my little assistant, just a little longer," Sophia conceded with a soft laugh. At that moment, Ethan looked up and saw his father. The brilliant smile on his face vanished, replaced by a mixture of surprise and concern. "Dad, you're home early," he said, nearly losing his balance as he turned too quickly. Sophia leaped to her feet, dropping the rag. Her movements were a mix of alarm and apology. She nervously wiped her hands on her apron and gave a quick, respectful bow. "Good evening, Mr. Hayes. I didn't know you'd be home so soon. I was just finishing up the cleaning." Alexander, still unable to speak, simply looked from his son to Sophia, who seemed to want nothing more than to disappear. "Ethan, what are you doing?" he finally managed to ask, the words sounding foreign and harsh even to his own ears. "I was helping Tia Sophia." "Look, Dad," Ethan said proudly, steadying himself on his crutches. "Today, I stood all by myself for almost 5 minutes." Alexander turned to Sophia. She lowered her head, her hands tightening on her apron. "5 minutes," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. He knew this was a monumental feat. His son's doctor had said such a thing would take months of dedicated, painful therapy. "Yes, Tia Sophia makes me practice every day," Ethan explained, his voice full of bubbling excitement. "She says if I keep trying, one day I'll run like the other kids." The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Alexander's chest felt tight with a storm of emotions. He demanded, "Practice? What practice?" Sophia raised her head, her brown eyes wide with fear. "Sir, I was only playing with the boy. I didn't mean to overstep." Before she could continue, Ethan quickly moved, trying to stand between his father and her. "Dad, Tia Sophia is amazing. She never leaves me when I cry from the pain. She says I'm strong like a warrior." Alexander felt a new wave of shame. How long had it been since he had spent 5 minutes, let alone a day, with his own son? He swallowed hard and said, "Ethan, go upstairs to your room. I need to speak with Tia Sophia." "But, Dad." "Ethan, listen to me." The boy looked at Sophia, who gave him a reassuring smile, a silent signal that everything would be okay. With the familiar clatter of his crutches, Ethan turned and made his way to the stairs. Just before he disappeared from view, he turned back and shouted, "Tia Sophia is the best person in the world." Alexander and Sophia were left alone in the room. For the first time, he truly looked at her. He saw the faint lines of exhaustion under her eyes, the calluses on her hands from scrubbing, and the wet stains on the knees of her trousers. She looked frail and small in the vast living room. "How long have you been practicing with Ethan?" he asked, his voice low and devoid of anger. "About 6 months, sir. But I always use my lunch break or finish my duties first. I never neglect my work." Her voice was soft but firm, a quiet defense against an accusation he hadn't made. "You're not being paid extra for this." "No, sir. I never expected anything. I just enjoy spending time with the boy." Alexander was speechless. He found himself asking a question he never thought he would ask a member of his staff. "Why do you care so much?" A soft, sad smile touched Sophia's lips. "Because he never gives up, even when it hurts." because he has such a big heart and always worries about others. Ethan is truly wonderful. Her words cut into Alexander's heart like a knife. He had never once looked at his son that way. He saw a project, a problem to be solved with money and the best doctors. He had never seen him as a person. Where did you learn to do these exercises? Alexander pressed, his voice still calm. Sophia hesitated, her head lowered. I have some experience, sir. What kind of experience? She remained silent for a long while before finally confessing. My younger brother, Carlos, was born with weak legs. I spent my entire childhood taking him to physical therapy, learning exercises to help him walk. When I saw Ethan, feeling so sad and alone, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. Forgive me, sir, but the boy, he is very lonely, and you are always consumed by work. Alexander was stunned into silence. Her words were a mirror, showing him the man he had become. If you wish, I'll stop right away. Sophia's voice was a whisper. I only wanted the boy to smile more. A child should be able to laugh every day. Her simple words hit him harder than any criticism he had ever received. He realized with a jolt that he couldn't remember the last time he had seen his son truly smile. Sophia, may I ask you something personal? Yes, of course, sir. Why are you working as a housekeeper? Clearly, you have knowledge of therapy and are very good with children. Why not work in healthcare? She gave a faint, bitter smile. Because I have no degree, sir. Everything I know, I learned from caring for my younger brother. None of it holds any official value. I have to work to support my family. My mother and my brother Carlos. He's only 16, goes to school in the mornings and helps at a shop in the afternoons. My mother works night shifts cleaning offices. We just scrape by. Alexander felt a profound mix of shame and admiration. In front of him stood a young woman worn down by the weight of her family's needs. And yet she still found the time and tenderness to give to his son. Have you never thought of studying to become a licensed therapist? Sophia's smile was thin, edged with bitterness. Study for what, sir? Where would I find the money? The time? I leave home at 6 in the morning, take 2 buses to get here, work until 6 in the evening, then take 2 more buses home by 8. I help my brother with his studies, prepare dinner. I go to bed close to midnight. On weekends, I clean other houses for extra money. Where would I find the time to study? He was silent, listening to every word, realizing with a sickening jolt that he had never known anything about her life beyond the 8 hours she spent inside his estate. Sophia, he said, his voice laced with a new tone, a hint of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope, I want to see the exercises you've been doing with Ethan. Sophia hesitated. But the boy is already in his pajamas. We usually practice in the mornings before his online classes. I arrive at 7:30, prepare breakfast, and while the rest of the house is still asleep, Ethan and I go out to the garden to train. Afterwards, he showers, eats breakfast, and begins class. Alexander was stunned. He hadn't the slightest idea about his son's morning routine. He always left home by 7 and returned only after 9 at night. Even his weekends were buried in work. Does Ethan enjoy these exercises? He asked. He loves them. At first, it was difficult and painful, but now he asks for them himself. Just yesterday, he stood for nearly 3 minutes without his crutches. Alexander's eyes widened. The physical therapist had said such progress would take many more months. He looked at Sophia, a faint blush on her cheeks. Maybe Ethan has an extra motivation. He wants to impress me. And, she hesitated. He wants to impress you too. Alexander's throat tightened. He had no idea his son thought of him that way. At that moment, the soft tapping of crutches echoed on the stairs. Ethan appeared, his small body a shadow in the dim light. Dad, you're still here, he whispered. You should be asleep, Alexander said, his tone no longer stern. I couldn't sleep, Ethan said, his voice small and full of worry. You're not going to send Tia Sophia away, are you? Alexander froze. Why would you think that? Because earlier you looked so serious when you told me to go upstairs. Mom always sent the maids away whenever they did something she didn't like. Alexander glanced at Sophia, who lowered her head again. He knelt down to his son's eye level. Ethan, do you like Sophia? I like her a lot. She's my best friend. Why your best friend? Ethan thought for a moment before answering. Because she plays with me, listens to me, never rushes me. She believes I'll walk like the other kids one day. Alexander's heart clenched. He asked softly, and what about me? Am I your friend? Ethan was silent for a moment, then whispered, you're my dad, not my friend. A dad is important, but a friend is the one who's always there. The answer pierced Alexander's chest like a blade. He turned to Sophia and saw her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Ethan, I want to be your friend. Will you let me? The boy's eyes lit up. Really, Dad? Really? Really? But being friends means playing together, listening to my stories, and watching me practice with Tia Sophia. Ethan leaped with joy, nearly losing his balance. Then tomorrow, you have to come to the garden and watch. Alexander smiled, a wave of emotion flooding his heart after years of absence. I'll be there tomorrow, I promise. Ethan threw his arms around his father. Now I have two best friends, Dad and Tia Sophia. Alexander hugged his son tightly, his chest brimming with a love he thought he had forgotten how to feel. He whispered, go to bed now, champ. Tomorrow will be a special day. When Ethan had gone upstairs, Alexander turned to Sophia. He spoke just one word. Thank you. Thank you for what, sir? For caring for my son. For doing what I didn't know how to do. Sophia gave a shy smile. The boy is very special. Anyone would love him. But not everyone would have the patience or the knowledge to help him make progress, Alexander said. He was silent for a long moment, a storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. Then he made a decision. He had 3 important meetings scheduled for the morning. A video call with American investors at 8 a.m., a report that needed to be finalized, and a strategy session with his board. Suddenly, all of it felt meaningless. I'll be here in the morning, he said firmly, surprising even himself. That night, when he went to Ethan's room, Alexander found his son fast asleep. The boy had placed his crutches neatly by the bed, as if ready for the day to come. Alexander sat at the edge of the bed, gazing at his son, his heart aching. How many moments of his childhood had he missed? He pulled out his phone, canceled all 3 meetings, and sent an email to reschedule the video call. For the first time in his career, he chose family first. The next morning, Alexander woke up at 6:30. He showered, dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans, and headed down to the kitchen. Sophia was already there, preparing breakfast. Good morning, Sophia, Alexander said, making her startle. Good morning, Mr. Hayes. You're up unusually early today. That's right. Is Ethan still asleep? Yes, sir. He usually wakes up around 7:30. We start our exercises at 8 after breakfast. Alexander checked his watch. It was only 7:15. He stepped closer. Is there anything I can help with? Sophia looked flustered. You want to help prepare breakfast, sir? Of course. What does Ethan like on Monday mornings? Hotcakes, sir. He says he needs the energy to start the week. Alexander chuckled, shaking his head. Really? I never knew that. Sophia smiled gently. He always says so. Besides, it gives him motivation for training. Alexander stood watching her skillfully stir the batter and pour each pancake. Suddenly, he realized she wasn't just cooking. She was preparing a little joy for his son. Sophia, may I ask you something personal? Yes, sir. Why do you care so much about Ethan? Sophia paused, then answered softly. When I was a child, I often saw my younger brother shunned by others because of his weak legs. I still remember the sadness in his eyes when he wanted to play but couldn't keep up. I became his best friend, making up games he could play, encouraging him to try new things, celebrating every tiny step. And it worked. Now Carlos is in high school. He still has limitations, but he never gives up. He lives with strength. Alexander studied her intently. In Sophia's eyes, he saw a deep well of pride. And you want the same for Ethan. What I want is for him to be happy. I want Ethan to believe he can do anything. Because with the loving and complete family he has, he'll go much further than my brother ever could. Alexander's chest tightened with both emotion and shame. He realized that while his son had every material condition, he lacked the most important thing, the care of his own parents. At that moment, Ethan entered the kitchen. His hair tousled, one hand gripping his crutches. "Dad!" he exclaimed in astonishment. "You haven't gone to work." "Good morning, champ. Today I stayed home to watch you train. Remember?" Ethan's eyes lit up. "Really? You'll see how strong I've become." "Of course, but first, let's have breakfast. Sophia made special hotcakes just for you." Ethan cheered, hobbling quickly on his crutches to the table. Throughout breakfast, Alexander quietly observed. His son and Sophia laughed and chatted like old friends, sharing little stories, planning their training. Ethan was so happy he couldn't stop talking, constantly turning to brag to his father. "Dad, did you know I climbed 3 steps of the stairs without crutches?" Alexander's eyes widened. "Really? That's amazing. And I even know some stretching exercises like grown-ups." "Stretching exercises?" "Yes, Tia Sophia taught me. She says muscles have to be ready before practice." Alexander glanced at Sophia. He could see clearly that she knew exactly what she was doing. At precisely 8 o'clock, the 3 of them went out to the garden. Sophia spread a mat over the grass. "Come on, Ethan. Let's start with stretches." Ethan lay down, performing each movement with such precision and seriousness that Alexander was astonished. "Very good. Now we'll work on balance," Sophia said. She helped Ethan to his feet and set the crutches aside. "Try standing for 30 seconds without them. If you succeed, tomorrow we'll try 45. Ethan lifted his chin with determination. "I want to try a whole minute." "Take it slow. 30 seconds is already excellent." Ethan let go of his crutches. Alexander held his breath, watching his son tremble as he tried to stay upright. 15 seconds. Sophia counted, her voice full of encouragement. "See that, Dad?" Ethan called out, his eyes fixed straight ahead. "I see it. You're incredible." 25, 30. As Sophia finished counting, Ethan wobbled and nearly fell, but she caught him in time. "I did it! A full 30 seconds!" Ethan shouted in triumph. Alexander swept his son into his arms, his eyes glistening. "Ethan, I'm so proud of you." The boy beamed, panting with excitement. "Now you understand why I love training with Tia Sophia, right?" "I understand," Alexander whispered. In the days that followed, Alexander's life began to change. He no longer left the house at dawn, but instead stayed for breakfast with his son and made sure to watch the morning practice in the garden. The more he observed, the more astonished he became at Ethan's steady progress. The boy could stand longer, walk with greater confidence, and above all, the genuine, uninhibited smile had returned to his little face. One afternoon, while Ethan was busy drawing in his room, Alexander invited Sophia into the library. The vast room, lined with bookshelves, no longer carried its usual coldness. Standing by the window, Alexander hesitated for a moment before turning to her. "Sophia." His voice faltered, then softened in a way she had never heard before. "I owe you more than just gratitude. What you've done for Ethan goes far beyond the duties of a housekeeper. You've given my son hope, and you've given it to me as well." Sophia shook her head quickly, flustered. "Mr. Hayes, I only did what my heart told me to. I never expected anything more than seeing Ethan happy." Alexander stepped closer, his expression serious but sincere. "That's exactly why I want to make you a proposal. I want you to become Ethan's official therapeutic companion, not just a maid." Sophia froze, her eyes widening. I don't understand." "What do you mean?" "I mean I want you to dedicate all your time to Ethan. The other housework will be handled by someone else. Your sole responsibility will be to accompany him, support him, and continue what you've been doing, but officially with proper recognition and compensation." Sophia fidgeted, her hands twisting together. But, sir, I don't have a degree. Everything I know comes from helping my younger brother. That's not enough to. Alexander interrupted gently. Then I'll sponsor your education. I'll cover the full cost of a formal physical therapy program, tuition, books, everything. Meanwhile, you'll stay here and continue working with Ethan. You'll receive a higher salary, and your family will also be supported. Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. Mr. Hayes, why would you do all this for me? Alexander was silent for a moment, then replied softly, not just for you. I'm doing it for Ethan. My son needs you, not only as a friend but as a source of strength I cannot replace. And for you, I believe you deserve the chance to pursue what you're truly gifted at. Sophia lowered her head as tears rolled down her cheeks. A wave of indescribable emotion flooded her heart. Gratitude, fear, and joy all at once. She thought of her mother working tirelessly and her younger brother struggling to make ends meet. This proposal could change not only her life, but theirs as well. Mr. Hayes, her voice broke, I won't let you down. I promise to give my whole heart to Ethan. Alexander nodded, a spark of trust gleaming in his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt a bright future unfolding, not only for Ethan but for himself as well. News of Ethan's remarkable progress soon spread through high society. Some of Alexander's acquaintances, who had always known him as a cold businessman obsessed only with profit, began to whisper. They couldn't believe that a powerful billionaire would allow a young maid to have such influence over his son. One evening at a charity gala hosted by a major corporation, Alexander brought Ethan along. When Sophia appeared, dressed simply in a pale blue dress, several curious and disdainful eyes turned toward her. One guest whispered loudly enough for Sophia to hear. How strange! Alexander Hayes has everything, yet he lets a servant meddle so deeply in his family. Sophia lowered her head, trying to hide her hurt. Ethan squeezed her hand tightly and whispered, Don't be sad, Sophia. I know you're the best. Alexander overheard, and his blood boiled. He turned to face the guests, his voice calm but commanding. That woman has accomplished what all the money and the best doctors could not. She made my son believe he could walk again. If you cannot understand the value of that, then perhaps we have nothing more to discuss. The room fell silent, but the challenges didn't stop there. A few weeks later, Alexander received a call from Marcus Caldwell, a wealthy businessman whose grandson suffered from cerebral palsy. Alexander, I've heard your maid is remarkable with special needs children. I want to hire her for my grandson. I'll pay her double what you pay plus every benefit imaginable. Alexander froze. He answered firmly, Sophia is not for sale. She's part of my family. But Marcus was not so easily deterred. Just days later, Sophia herself approached Alexander, her eyes clouded with uncertainty. Mr. Hayes, I received a job offer. Alexander nodded slightly. From Marcus Caldwell. Sophia hesitated, then nodded. Yes, they promised to take care of my mother and my younger brother. That amount of money could change my family's life. But I don't know what to do. I don't want to leave Ethan. Alexander studied her for a long moment. In his eyes was both respect and worry. He understood Sophia was torn between her duty to her family and her bond with Ethan. The most important question, Alexander said softly, is, what will happen to my son if you leave? Tears filled Sophia's eyes. He would be devastated. Ethan trusts me as much as he trusts himself. Just thinking about leaving already breaks my heart. Alexander stepped closer, his voice resolute. Then I won't let that happen. I'll ensure your mother and brother are cared for. I'll match or surpass their offer. But more importantly, Sophia, I need you to know. To me, you are no longer an employee. You are part of this family. Sophia broke down, her shoulders trembling. Mr. Hayes, I have only one thing to say. I will stay. For Ethan. For everything. In that moment, Alexander realized his family had faced their first great trial, and thanks to Sophia, they had emerged stronger than ever. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere in the Hayes mansion seemed completely transformed. Every morning, Alexander sat in the garden, patiently watching Ethan's practice. His presence gave the boy new strength. Ethan improved day by day. He could stand longer, and his hesitant steps grew steadier. Sophia was always by his side, patiently catching him when he fell, then encouraging him to try once more. Each time Alexander witnessed it, his throat tightened. He realized it was Sophia's persistence and love that had ignited the fire of determination in his son. Then on one crisp morning, a miracle happened. "Ethan, today we'll try something new," Sophia said with a smile, her eyes glowing with trust. "You're going to set your crutches aside and try to walk a few steps." Excitement flickered in Ethan's eyes, mixed with fear. He turned to his father. "Dad, do you think I can do it?" Alexander knelt down, taking his small hand. "I know you can, Ethan. I believe in you." The boy's bright blue eyes sparkled. Ethan took a deep breath, then slowly set the crutches aside. Sophia stepped back slightly, her arms ready. Alexander opened his arms wide in front of him. 1, 2, 3 steps. Ethan trembled, but each step echoed like a drumbeat of victory. "I did it!" he shouted, his voice bursting with excitement. Then he stumbled forward into his father's arms, falling but without a trace of tears. Instead, he laughed through the tears streaming down his cheeks. "Dad, I walked. I really walked." Alexander held his son tightly, his heart overflowing. "My boy, you're incredible. I've never been prouder than I am right now." Sophia stood nearby, tears glistening in her eyes, her hand covering her mouth to stifle her emotion. Ethan turned toward her and shouted, "Sophia, did you see? I walked." She smiled, her voice trembling. "I saw, my little warrior. You truly triumphed." In that moment, Alexander knew his life had changed forever. No business deal, no skyscraper could compare to the joy of watching his son achieve the impossible. And he knew it was all because of Sophia, the woman who had brought a miracle into his family. After the day Ethan took his very first steps, the mansion seemed to come alive with light. The boy grew more energetic than ever, always eager to show his father and Sophia each new accomplishment. And from that day forward, Alexander realized he was changing, too. He no longer saw Sophia as just a maid. Every morning, as he sat in the garden, watching her patiently guide Ethan, he felt something different. Warmth, trust, and a hope he thought he had lost after Amelia's passing. One afternoon after practice, Ethan hurried clumsily toward his father. "Dad, today I walked 6 steps without my crutches. Sophia says, tomorrow I can try even more." Alexander bent down, wrapping his son in a hug. "That's incredible, Ethan. I'm so proud of you." He glanced at Sophia, his eyes meeting her gentle brown gaze. In that moment, both of them knew they had shared something extraordinary together. In the days that followed, the bond among the three grew even stronger. Ethan often called them his dream team. He giggled, "Dad is the superhero, Sophia is the coach, and I'm the little warrior." Alexander and Sophia could only exchange smiles, their hearts warmed by his innocent joy. Sometimes Alexander caught himself watching Sophia as she worked in the kitchen or tended the small garden behind the house. She didn't belong to the glittering world of high society. Yet, she brought a piece of life into his world that he had never found anywhere else. One evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Alexander stepped into the garden. Sophia was sitting on a wooden bench, gazing up at the starry sky. He hesitated, then took a seat beside her. "You know," Alexander said softly, "it's been so long since I've seen Ethan smile like this, and it's been just as long since I felt alive again." Sophia turned to him, her eyes shimmering. "Mr. Hayes, that's because of you. He needs his father more than anything. I only played a small part." Alexander shook his head. "No, Sophia. You brought back the light I thought I had lost forever." Her heart skipped a beat at his words. She pressed her lips together, unable to respond, though her pulse raced wildly. In that moment, the two sat in silence, the breeze rustling through the leaves around them. Yet within that silence, an invisible thread began to form. A bond no longer built solely on duty, but on admiration, trust, and a deepening affection neither of them could deny. In the days that followed, Alexander became increasingly aware of his feelings. Every time he saw Sophia patiently guiding Ethan, or heard her gentle laughter echo through the once cold mansion, his heart warmed. It had been so long since Amelia's passing that he had felt this way, alive, cared for, and full of hope. One evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Alexander asked Sophia to stay in the living room. The soft light cast a glow over her face, her kind brown eyes seeming even brighter in the quiet. "Sophia," he began, his voice lower than usual, "I've been thinking a lot about Ethan, about this family, and about you." Sophia lifted her head slightly, her heart racing. "Mr. Hayes." Alexander drew a deep breath, his gaze unwavering with sincerity. "I've lost so much, and I closed my heart for a long time. But then you came, bringing light, bringing back Ethan's laughter, and mine as well. I can't deny it anymore. Somewhere between grief and silence, you brought me back to life. And with that life came feelings for you." Sophia froze. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her heart fluttered with both joy and fear. At last, she shook her head, her voice trembling. "Mr. Hayes, that can't be. You're a billionaire and I'm just an ordinary woman. People will never accept it." Alexander stepped closer, his eyes steady. "I don't care what society thinks. The only things that matter to me are Ethan, this family, and you, Sophia. You're not just part of our lives. You are the heart of it." Tears welled up as Sophia turned away, trying to hide her emotions. I'm afraid if I say yes, the whole world will turn against you." Alexander gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll face it together. I once thought I could fight life's battles alone, but now I know. I don't want to continue this life without you by my side." In that moment, Sophia felt the walls around her heart begin to crumble. She didn't answer, but the tears shimmering in her eyes spoke for her. And Alexander knew they had just crossed into a new chapter, where love was born out of loss, resilience, and hope. As time passed, the bond between Alexander and Sophia became undeniable. Though high society whispered, he paid no attention. The only thing that mattered was Ethan, and the boy had never been happier. Every time he saw his father and Sophia laughing together, he would exclaim, "Now I have both my superhero and my coach right here with me." One spring evening, Alexander sat in the garden, the same place where Ethan had taken his first steps. Warm golden lights surrounded them. He held Sophia's hand, his eyes steady. "Sophia, I once thought I'd spend the rest of my life in solitude, knowing only work. But you and Ethan have shown me that the most valuable thing isn't skyscrapers or numbers. It's family. Will you marry me?" Sophia froze, tears flooding her eyes at once. She nodded, unable to form words, squeezing his hand tightly. Alexander smiled, his eyes glistening. "From now on, we'll build a true family together." The wedding day arrived, simple yet filled with warmth. Instead of a lavish ballroom, Alexander chose the garden behind the mansion, the very place where Ethan had once run into his arms for the first time. Guests were only close friends and a few colleagues who respected his decision. Ethan wore a tiny suit, becoming the special best man. With pride, he held Sophia's hand and led her down the flower-strewn path. "Miss Sophia, today I give you to Dad," Ethan said with a radiant grin, his voice bubbling with excitement. The words made Sophia's heart swell so much that she nearly cried. When the vows were spoken, Alexander looked straight into her eyes. "I, Alexander Hayes, promise to love and cherish Sophia, not only as my wife, but as the one who gave me and my son a reason to live, to hope. I vow to place this family above all else." Sophia answered, her voice trembling. "I, Sophia Ramirez, promise to stand by Alexander and Ethan in joy and in challenge. I'm not here to replace anyone, but to build a home where love is the foundation." As the rings were exchanged, Ethan clapped his hands and shouted, "Now we really are a dream team." Laughter rippled through the garden, mingled with tears of joy. Alexander embraced Sophia and whispered, "At last, we've found our new path." That night, beneath a sky full of stars, the Hayes family began their new chapter. Not just a story of a cold billionaire or a kind-hearted maid, but a story of a family healed by love, bound by trust, and blessed by the miracles that come from the human heart.